I tried to get here earlier.
Good morning. It's 9 o'clock and Chairman Berman of the Finance and Budget Committee, a call to order on Wednesday, April 27th, 2022. Let's have roll call, please.
Leonard,
Leonard here.
Ford, Martin,
Present.
Sanchez,
Sanchez present.
Sturgis, Tepe,
Deputy here.
Pirog, Shepro,
Jeffro present.
Berman.
Berman's here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. You have a motion and a second to approve minutes from March 23rd, 2022.
Leonard moves.
Leonard moves.
Martin second.
Martin second. Any discussion, any changes?
Inquiry on my screen. What's posted is the ARPA committee agenda. Is that?
I'm sorry, that's my error.
There we
Just a
go.
technical error.
Thank you.
Your screen, Kip.
You sure you're in the right meeting?
That's the next one.
It just reappeared. Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Ford, Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Sturgis, Tepe,
To be on the right. Yes.
Berman's there, or yes. Any public comments? Is there anyone here to speak? Anyone online? Item 4, Mr. Kilburn, Treasurer's Report.
Good morning. My report is available for you. I do have several comments. You'll see that our rate of return is slowly turning up from the lows we saw at the end of 2021. As I've explained before, King County investments are laddered out to 5 years, so our return will move a little slower than what you see in the month-to-month returns as the Fed in this environment is quickly increasing interest rates. We make our investments with a mindset of safety first, followed by liquidity, and then return. In reference to inflation, we're still in a very high inflation environment. We had and continue to have an artificial flow of money into the economy with a restriction of products. China, once again, is facing lockdowns in different parts of the country, which is not going to be kind to our supply chain issue. Federal Reserve Chairman Powell signaled the central bank will likely increase interest rates by 50 basis points, 0.5% at the next meeting, the first week in May. He further indicated that similar rate increases may be warranted in subsequent meetings due to the excessively high and prolonged inflationary pressures that face us. On a happier note, we do expect the second tranche of the American Rescue Plan to be delivered to us in May. I know last year at this time, we all discovered that word tranche, and now I see it used more and more often. But we expect that second and last part in May. The tax bills, although not directly related to this committee, but tax bills are out and available online. We plan to have them mailed out Friday and or Monday so that the hard copies will be delivered to the homes. We already, on the first day the bills were out, we collected over $400,000 in taxes on that day by people looking at their bills online, predominantly paying that $400,000 online through e-check or credit cards. And this morning there were 2 people waiting outside the office to pay when we opened. So,
Wow. Wow.
any questions?
Are there any questions of our treasurer?
Thank you very much. I'm
yes,
sorry.
I'm sorry. I do.
Madam Chair?
Just a general inquiry. So I was listening to NPR today, and they were doing a financial assessment of what's happening in Europe. And it looks like the war in the Russian war in Ukraine may start spilling over to the eastern bloc of Europe, beyond Ukraine, which is going to impact further oil, gasoline prices, et cetera. Is any of that going to impact us? I mean, my concern is, and please say it's going to be okay, Corinne. Will we be stable?
We do have a lot of supply of our own oil, but we are affected by what goes on in Europe with oil and other energy needs. There's no way that it's not going to affect us. It really is to the extent that it will affect supply and demand, which then affects cost for our energy needs. The only silver lining is, we and Europe are moving out of our winter season. So there is less need, less demand for some of that energy. But to forecast where Russia will be and what they will be doing as we move into the fall of 2022, which will then have a greater effect because of the need for liquid natural gas over there in Europe to heat the homes. That's an unknown, Madam Chair.
At our investments, I asked you previously, and thank you for doing that research, that we have no investments at all that are related to any kind of Russian companies that are here in the United States or overseas. But if the European economy starts to tank, which it may,
Yes, ma'am.
will that have any impact on our investments?
Much like the energy sector, it's difficult to say that we don't have some tentacles out into the European investment, or more appropriately, that if their investment goes down, the US might mirror that same issue. Maybe not to the extent, because we're not directly affected by it, but it's one world that's connected when these things occur.
So I realize that you don't have the magic 8 ball, but if you hear anything, could you let Mr. Berman and myself and obviously Mr. Onzik know, so we can keep posted on what our next steps are with the budget. And I want to thank all of our taxpayers.
Yes, and as I started out, our investments are laddered, and meaning that they're out in a 5-year period. So we are somewhat protected because we don't have all our money in on the table right now facing that environment.
Okay, thank you so much.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Item 5, Finance Director Report, Mr. Onzik.
Morning, everyone. I have a lot of detail included in my report. I'm not going to review everything, but I'll just point out some of the things that may have changed since the last time. The first section of my report, I'm just letting you know that the final transition audit report has been completed. That was for the Director of Human Resources, the transition that occurred there. And now that the final set of transition audit reports are finished and available, they've all been posted on the finance website. And just to let you know, there have been absolutely no findings. Everything has been found to be in order in terms of what they looked at and tested. A quick update on the fiscal year 2021 year-end close and the audit status. The audit field work that was expected to end at the end of March spilled over into April as a result of a longer amount of time needed to process what we refer to as the GASB 84 conversion, which is what we're taking the agency funds, which previously had been reported as agency funds, and they've now been either reclassified as either custodial funds or special revenue funds, depending on the criteria. And then all of the transactions of those funds needed to be reprocessed and restated accordingly. So that took longer, and as well as the reconciliations and the provision of data for the ARPA and the Emergency Rescue Plan funds. But even though it is taking longer, we're still believe we're on track to complete the audit and have the financial statements available at the end of May. As a result of the ongoing reconciliations and occasional adjustments since our last meeting, there have been a few minor changes. And so I recreated for you in my report the revenue line item variance summary. So this lists for you in descending order of variances, what contributed to the total 11,321,000 favorable revenue variance. I highlighted the items in orange that have changed. And one thing to note is there was a mistake made previously and in the initial report that was sent out, and that's probation salary reimbursement. That really belongs under court services, and it was accidentally flagged as belonging to the sheriff. So that has been corrected, and that's why that is highlighted in yellow. Similarly, then, if you look in the department revenue variance summary section, I've highlighted the department numbers that have changed slightly. And again, the court services line is highlighted only because now it is reported out as a separate line, whereas before it was accidentally included under the sheriff. So that is why the court services line and the sheriff's line is highlighted. So at this point, I believe this report is correct and up to date. But certainly if anyone notices anything, please let us know. And then we have the expenditure variance section. Nothing has changed there. There are no further expenses found. So that still leaves us with a positive $6.2 million variance. What I did add to this was the payroll reimbursement from the ARPA funds of $8.4 million, because that then did in turn reduce our expenses. So meaning it increased the favorable variance by 8.4 million. So our total favorable variance on the expense side of things, if you include the payroll reimbursement, is $14.6 million. So the total revenue variance of 11.3 million and the total expense variance of 14.6 led to a favorable variance of $25.9 million in total. The next section of my report, I just recapped for you, what we've done in terms of allocating the variances. So basically it's been we had that initial set aside of $500,000 for sheriff's office vehicles. We then split what was available at that time as excess revenue over expenditures between property tax freeze and capital fund. That was $3.1 million each. We then had some miscellaneous items where we had savings in the budget for specific purchases or projects or services that were delayed until the new year. And so those are carried over in the special reserve, and that's that 80,000 figure. Then as a result of the revenue variance, we no longer needed to utilize the savings from the COVID payroll reimbursements that we used to balance the fiscal year 2021 budget. So those amounts were put back into the COVID payroll reimbursement reserve accounts, and that's at 5.6 million and 2.3 million. Then as of the last Finance Committee meeting, we had that additional amount of excess revenue over savings that we again split between property tax freeze protection fund and capital fund, and that's at 1.375 figure for each of those funds. As a result of some minor reductions in the revenue variance since our last meeting, you had pre-authorized me to adjust the property tax freeze fund accordingly. So that was adjusted downwards by that $10,000. And then as a result of the payroll reimbursement that was approved by the board from the ARPA fund, we then put the $8.4 million of budgetary savings into the COVID payroll reimbursement reserve fund. So that accounts for that total $25.9 million variance and where it was all allocated. And so to the extent that it's all sitting in these reserves, it is available for the board's use for whatever it chooses to use it for. And that left a total of $4,700 positive variance in the general fund that will just simply be absorbed into the general fund balance. Okay. Are there any questions at this point, since I reviewed a lot of figures?
Martin?
This is kind of a broad question, but since economics is always known as the grim science, when I look at this report, to me, I find myself buoyed as to the county's finances. What's the downside here that I'm not seeing?
I'm not sure that there is a downside with this particular news. I think this is all very good news for us that we're able to reimburse and strengthen our reserves. So that's certainly very good news, and it will help us to bridge the revenue gaps and the gaps, in the next few years as we seek to balance the budget. But although this is a significant amount, the needs, the requests, far outweigh this. So there's many projects, there's many capital needs, there's looking forward, there's on the operating side, there's needs for balancing the budget. So, I think we can already see that although it's a large amount, the needs, the potential needs far outweigh it. So, but we have this much, so we're in a much better position than we would have been otherwise.
Right, thank you.
Then I would like to just, I think I mentioned this at the executive committee meeting, but I just wanted to add it in my finance committee report for the record as well. And this is regarding the additional property tax revenue that we'll be bringing in fiscal year 2022. That's over and above what we had budgeted. And that total is $154,000. And again, there was just a small amount over what we had budgeted for new construction, and that was that $11,986 figure. So the budget for new construction was extremely close, and with only that almost $12,000 more coming in for new construction. But what's new and different is that $142,716 figure. This has to do with refunds that were paid out from last year's taxes due to assessment reductions. So as a result of court orders, adjustments by the assessor's office, so on. So in total, the treasurer's office certified that there was $142,000 of refunds that were paid out. And as a result of the new statute that was approved by the governor, signed by the governor in August, we are directed to increase our tax levy by that amount. So because we collected that much less last year, we're now able to increase our tax levy by that much to make up for that difference. And that's strictly in obeyance and compliance with the statute. It's not really a choice on our part, but it's in compliance with the statute. In riverboat proceeds, I mentioned in executive committee, this year the contribution is almost $5.4 million. And we had only estimated it at being at 1.9 million because that was the amount that we received last year. The contribution from the riverboat represents 7.5% of their net operating revenue after they add back their depreciation expense and contributions. So this is strictly governed by how well they do in terms of net operating. And apparently they did very well this past year in comparison to the previous year when we had the shutdowns. I then have a large section that covers the various variances within each of the individual funds. There's really nothing of concern. Most of these are in special revenue funds where they have fund balances to cover the overages. The one thing that caught my attention was that in the coroner's general fund on page 7, it's the result of the higher fuel prices is already starting to show up because it's more than what they had budgeted year to date. And I'm sure we're going to find that in other areas as well, but that's where it's first cropping up. If you move on to page 8 of my report, this is the shared and direct state tax revenue update. And so we're continuing to collect a far greater amount of sales tax revenue than we had in the previous year and then what we had budgeted year to date so far. We're collected almost $1.3 million more year to date than what we had budgeted for sales tax alone. And that combined with local use tax, RTA sales tax, state income tax, and personal property replacement tax, we're $3.5 million ahead of what we budgeted and what we collected last year. So that's also very good news. But I don't know if you saw this, and maybe it's been mentioned and I missed it in public, but we did see that there's a sales tax holiday that's planned on food purchases by the state of Illinois beginning, I believe, in July. So that should impact our sales tax revenue, and we won't see quite as strong a figure going forward, but I think we'll still end up greater than what we had budgeted by the end of the year. Capital funds, since it's really early in the year, the building management portion is only 15% expended, and information technology 24% expended. What's looking to be the final figures from the contingency balance for FY21, there was $330,000 left unspent for general expenditures and $41,000 left unspent for adult prisoner room and board. And at this point, we still have the full amount of the contingencies available of $1 million for general operating needs and $50,000 for adult prisoner room and board in the sheriff's area for fiscal year 2022. Looking then at available operating reserves, we do have in the special reserve $125,000 that was set aside for the build out for the JJC courtroom. And I believe I saw a resolution coming through that will be accessing that. So that'll eventually be expended. Right now, as a result of what we had added to the property tax fees protection fund recently from 2021, excess revenue over expenditures, we have about $5 million. And I'm sorry, I should have crossed out that before excess revenue and expenditure allocation. It does include those now. So that was a typo that should have been crossed out. COVID payroll reimbursement reserve is now at $20 million. There's roughly $10 million left from the CARES Act payroll reimbursement and about $10 million left at this point for the American Rescue Plan payroll reimbursement. And the emergency reserve is at $5.2 million. We had some good news from IMRF. They, as a result of, as a result of the IMRF regular retirement plan being funded at 116% as a result of how well they had done with investments in the previous years, they were able to lower our required contribution rate from 6.73% that we're paying currently this year to 5.15% is what we're going to be required to pay in 2023. That's will result in a savings of 23.5% of the county's contribution next year that will be required next year. Similarly, in the SLEP retirement plan, we are now funded at 107%, and that in turn has lowered our required contribution rate from 21.26% to 15.44%, which equates to a savings of 27.4%. So those savings will be realized as part of next year's budget. So those will certainly be welcome. And I have a little more to share with you on that in a presentation after this. And then in terms of the budget process, I do have my calculations prepared. It'll be shown to you in a couple minutes here as far as what we'll be distributing to the departments and elected officials to use in terms of the benefit rates. And by those, I'm referring to the IMRF and SLEP retirement contributions, as well as the insurance liability, workers' comp, and unemployment chargebacks from the special revenue funds to help pay for those expenses. So I'll be showing you that in a couple minutes here. I believe there was a presentation yesterday at Committee of the Whole regarding the toll revenue bonds, and it was announced also at last county board, and it's been mentioned now several times that we are expecting to receive that $17.5 million from the state of Illinois for costs associated with the bridge project. We did consult with our bond counsel so that we can more thoroughly and fully understand what that means for us. Because of how the bonds were issued and the bond covenants that exist, we're not able to simply just pay off those bonds once we get to that money. We need to continue to pay the interest and the principal on those bonds until December 2028. And at that point, we can then pay off whatever remains in terms of principal. So we have two options according to bond counsel, and one would be to set up what's called a defeasance escrow fund that would be held by a trustee, and most likely it would be the same trustee that's taking care of other toll bridge functions. And that's Zion's Bank Corporation. And so we can deposit it with them and they would hold it in a trust account for us to be used to pay off bond principal in 2028. Or the other option would be to put it in a bond sinking fund. And then that would be at our own treasurer's discretion in terms of how it's invested. But then we could use those funds to pay the interest and the principal between now and 2028, so that we would not be required to use toll revenue for those payments. And then whatever is left, we could apply towards whatever principal remains at the end of 2028. So those are the two options. It seems that the more flexible one, of course, would be the bond sinking fund. And then that would allow us to use that if we so choose to pay the principal and interest and possibly avoid having to collect tolls, or at least reduce the amount of tolls that would need to be collected. So I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. And also there is a limit on what we can earn on those funds once we receive them and they're invested. And that's 4.17%. But so far in this environment, I don't think we're in danger of exceeding that, but
That'd be nice.
that's also true. Okay, then with purchasing report, just a few updates. They have 3 bids that were released in the month of March, and that was for road salt, holiday lighting for Mill Creek, and AED units for the Sheriff's Department. And there's currently 4 other bids, 1 request for qualifications, and 3 RFPs in process. Bid savings for the month were $6,748 for commercial washing machines and dryers. And our year-to-date cost savings so far is $169,000. So that completes my report. Anyone have any questions?
Ms. Mavis?
On page 4,
Yes.
under updated allocation of fiscal year excess revenue over expenditures, are these still suggestions?
Well, no, these were already approved by the board.
Oh,
And so it's just to kind of itemize for you for your reference, to have it all in one place, you know, what was decided upon. I guess I should have put dates by it so that you could correlate it with board meetings. But these are all decided upon by the board already.
great. Thank you.
Mr. Leonard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Onsick, a couple of things. Mr. Martin had said, where's the bad news on all this? Well, I think one of the things we have to realize is even though last year, the audit from 21 expenses were down 14 million, those aren't going to be down 14 million again. So, you know, our $25 million excess and surplus is really the revenue increase, which we should have again this year. And in fact, I think the treasurer had mentioned in his report to public service that it looks like property taxes for this coming year are going to go up about 40 million, of which we should get about 4%, which would generate about another $1.4 million for us, which is a good thing. Good and bad on the IMRF and SLUP. Yes, the rate went down because the performance was so good last year, but this year the performance is going to be so bad, the rate will go back up on both of those. So we shouldn't reallocate that money or not expect to have that same amount of money due or close to it in the following year. We have to kind of look ahead a little bit there. One good year is nice, but with performances this year, we're going to have to increase the rate, I think, next year.
Well, that is true. The one thing though, to try to remember is that when IMRF provides these rates, yes, it's impacted by the performance of the last year and it was extraordinary, but they use a 5-year average. So that way it smooths out, any kind of rough, wild fluctuations. But yes, I do agree with you. I think as things worsen and or I should say, as returns do not do as well, we're going to start to see another increase again in the rates.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then the last point I wanted to make was on the toll money that we are receiving, the 17.5 million, which is wonderful. I think we have to realize too that this is not enough to retire the bond in 2028. So we have to look at a way to make sure that we can generate revenue to help pay off that bond. And my impression would be, or my suggestion would be, that we continue with the toll until we get that bond amount satisfied and maybe even be able to reduce it a little bit. But if we don't go with the toll initially, you can't bring a toll in 8 years down the road.
No, I don't think that's a question. Yeah.
Good.
Mr. Martinez.
I'm sorry.
I'll give evidence of how little I understand of bonds in an ultimate sense, but it would seem to me in common sense that if in fact interest rates increase across the world, our interest rate will be that we're paying on those bonds. Am I wrong in saying, irrespective of the language and the covenants in there, would there be some ability to negotiate with bondholders to prepay to free up that money so that they could invest it at a higher rate, or are we absolutely irretrievably locked into that?
I believe we were told that's not an option. So whether there's could be some type of legal action that could be taken that would.
Talking legal, I'm just saying in a
I don't know.
normal negotiation, if I've lent you money at 2% and I can now lend that same money at 4%, I'd like to get that money back from you so I can lend it at 4%. And my question is,
no, there's no negotiation is not an option. The people that purchase these bonds purchase it with that understanding, and so their understanding is that it is locked in for this period of time as well. So we understood that, they understand that, and it's part of the bond covenants.
All right.
Comment, Shepro?
Shepro.
Yes. I think what's being said is correct. I mean, in theory, as Mr. Martin's question, I think, assumes, if rates skyrocket, the bondholders might like to, have them paid off early, but why we wouldn't? I mean, normally. And it would be very complicated. I think you'd almost have to do like a tender offer or something.
My apologies for wasting everybody's time.
All right. Good enough. Madam Chair, you had.
Yes, we've been, there's been a lot of conversation about the toll now because the dynamics have changed on this. What I would suggest is that perhaps we get together and actually talk about the toll and then bring this to the Finance Committee and to Transportation, because part of that toll is going to underwrite future repairs, infrastructure support on that bridge. So if we remove that, and see what that looks like. The actual obligation is going to be significantly less, I think by
27.
$9,000 or $9 million or so over the life of that bond. So I think we just need to put the numbers on paper and do a little math equation back and forth to figure out what we're going to be doing, whether or not we can reduce the toll by half, or whether we let the toll go for half the time that we consider to 28 or 29 when the bond would be fully paid, or could be possibly paid. So I just think we need to
Lot
put
of
pen to paper.
variables.
Comment, Shepro.
Mr. Shepro.
I think the timing of that, if I recall the presentation yesterday by Mr. Rickard, it would appear that they are in the process of reviewing internally some of these numbers, and I think it might be premature for us to be talking about the toll until transportation has come up with the numbers needed for us to have a intelligent discussion about what the options are.
Agreed.
We're all in agreement with that. There's no issue with that at all.
Comment,
Continue,
Sturgis?
Scott.
I think somebody wants to talk.
Mr. Chair, Sturgis?
Sturgis?
Go ahead.
Yes.
Hey, I just wanted to say thank you for Joe. And I don't think it was at the last finance meeting, but one of the other committee meetings, we had brought up the notion of IMRF and how those computations. So Joe, thank you so much for putting those together and substantiating a bit of the, a bit of the nuances for that. We very much appreciated.
Thank you.
All right. Continue on.
Okay, there's a little presentation I have that will review the budget rates that I've prepared. So I think that's, yeah, there we go. Okay. I think I have the clicker here. Oops. All right. So the IMR ref rates, this is just what I was referring to. What I did for you, just so you can see the impact of it, that very first blue column, the 2022 final rate, that's the rate that's in effect right now for the year 2022. So you can see what it is for IMRF and SLEP. SLEP is for the sheriff's office, correctional officers and the peace officers in that area. And then I compared that to the budgeted expense for IMRF and SLEP for this year. And then I show you in that middle column what the rate is for 2023. The IMRF calls it a preliminary rate because they release it now in the spring, and then in November they finalize it. Every year that I've been here, the final rate's been the same as the preliminary rate, and so we've been able to use this then for planning purposes. So we know then for budgeting purposes, we're going to be using those 2023 preliminary rates at 5.15% and 15.44%. Then what I did was I converted the expense for this year to show you what would that expense look like if we were paying it at this lower rate. And that's where we come up with that $3,096 and the $3,057. And so the difference between that then is over in the yellow far right column is that $950,000 reduction for IMRF expense and that $1.15 million reduction for SLEP. So that's a total of $2.1 million decrease in expense. And then I further broke it down so that you could see 300,000 of it has to do, would be savings that would be allocated out to the special revenue funds. And those would be any of the funds that have payroll expenses associated with them. And then the remainder of it is $1.8 million. And that savings would be realized within the IMRF fund itself. And the IMRF fund is what pays for all of the IMRF and SLEP expenses for the general fund. So this is something that's not obvious. We don't talk about it very much, but the IMRF expense is for the general fund, is in a separate fund. It's not in the general fund. But what this means is if there's $1.8 million savings in the IMRF fund as a result of this reduction in rates, we then need that much less property tax revenue to be allocated to the IMRF fund, which frees it up to be applied to the general fund. And so then we come out $1.8 million ahead in the general fund in terms of property tax revenue. So that's for the benefit to the general fund. That's how it happens.
Bates.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand why the IMRF rate went down.
It's a result of the extraordinary performance of their investments. They had very high rates of return. And so that is what contributed to the reduction.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Ansick, just one question on the IMRF and the SLUP money. I understand that there's going to be an excess of about $1,802,108 in the fund, but that will also relieve the general fund of applying property taxes for that amount to it. My concern is, as I said before, next year, if investments are down, I don't want us to have to realize that we spent that 1.8 million on something else, and now we have to find other sources of property tax money to pay that.
Well, that is a risk of lowering our budget for IMRF. One of the options you could consider is to still budget more for it, even though we're going to be paying less.
Yes.
We could budget more for it. But I see, this is where it starts to get difficult, because we're not allowed to levy taxes more than what we need. And so even though it may seem like the wise thing to do, legally, we're not able to levy more taxes than what we need. So I think we'd be limited in that way.
I have a.
I gotcha.
Yep.
But also to talk about the follow-up on Mr. Leonard, you mentioned earlier that because of the reduction in grocery sales tax that has been signed by the governor, we're going to have a potential reduction of our own sales tax revenue.
Tax, yes.
So
That going to be in place.
I think till the end of the year.
Yeah.
So that really won't affect the 23 budget.
No, it'll be into 24, but forecasting going forward.
We are receiving much more in sales tax than we budgeted. So I think, that's not a problem.
And the state fiscal year is different than our fiscal year. Their fiscal year begins in July. So that if I understand it correctly, that sales tax reduction will be in effect for the entire fiscal year for the state, which will go from July 1st of this year, 2022, all the way to June 30th of next year. So it does carry over into next fiscal year as well.
Deputy here,
Thank you.
that won't affect our budget, but will certainly affect our income.
Well, our income affects our
Well.
budget.
Shepro, question.
Yes.
So do I understand that the IMRF percentage number is changes year to year
Yeah.
based upon the performance?
Yes.
And does that change as of July 1st or as of December 31st?
It changes, I believe, with the beginning of the calendar year, or very close to it, but I believe it's with the calendar year.
Okay, the reason is that, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen next week, let alone next month. But when I look at my own 401k, which is rapidly turning into a 201k, the last couple of weeks, the numbers are down dramatically from December 31st. And I would assume that if that were carried over to the IMRF performance, it's not going to be that different.
I would agree with you, and I think IMRF performance will certainly be affected by what's happening now. But they do these measurements in terms of the end of their fiscal year, which is December 31st, the end of the
Right.
calendar year. So they'll have to see what the performance is at that point. But then again, when they calculate the rates, they do it, with an actuarial basis, and they do it over a 5-year average. So even though it may be a dramatic decrease in performance, that may occur for the one calendar year, they average it out over the previous 5 years. So that dramatic change would not translate into a dramatic change in the rates.
And they would also take into account changes in the prospective recipient base, right? I mean,
yes, that's all factored in.
Okay. I guess the point being is I think it just reinforces Mr. Leonard's comment that we don't look and say, wow, look at all this money we're saving and spend it.
That's true. We have to be prepared for it to be increasing again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, please, Joe.
Okay, I think this should go pretty quickly now. Okay, these are the rates that I calculated for insurance liability, workers' comp, and unemployment. And it's a very simple method. What I do is I take the average of the actual expense for insurance liability, workers' comp, unemployment over the last 3 years. But because, especially on the insurance liability side, because insurance rates are going up so dramatically year after year, what I've done is I've taken like a weighted average in the sense that, this is just, it's just my own way of trying to do this. I double counted the most current year. So I double counted the expense for 2021. So basically I'm doing a 4-year average, but I'm counting the last 2 years twice, just to give more weight to what's happening most recently in terms of trend, so that it's captured there. So by doing that, then, because there's such a dramatic change upwards in insurance liability, but then it was offset by dramatic changes downward in workers' comp and unemployment, overall, in those 3 rates combined, we're only 1.5%, or almost 1.6% increase. And these rates, this is not what we pay. This is what we are going to budget for the individual special revenue funds that have payroll as expense as part of those funds. What then they will pay back to the insurance liability fund is their contribution to help offset the expenses. So they're using some of their special revenue then to cover these costs. And that's what the whole point of this is. And they just show you the comparison from this, what I'm proposing for 2022 to what's in effect for proposing for 2023 in comparison to what's into effect now. So it's really not a very significant change. When you
Mr. Chair, Sturgis here.
Mr. Sturgis, yes.
Why am I the only one excited about this slide? Well done, Joe.
Well, thank you. I was excited.
Woo!
Well,
Okay. Then I think the only other thing that I wanted to just touch on is that normally when at this point of the year, we send out guidance in terms of, not only with these rates that should be used for budgeting, but in terms of what should be used for non-union wage increases. I don't know that we have enough information yet. And normally we go ahead and just use the same rate that was agreed upon with the AFSCME contracts. But since we don't have those rates yet, I think it's premature to try to indicate what the rate's going to be. So what I would suggest is that at this point, when we send out the information to the department heads and elected officials, we say it'll be to be determined. And then we can let them know at a later date once you have enough information to make that decision. And then if they do happen to have any special requests, we would instruct them to list them separately and to provide documentation as to the purpose of the request and how it was arrived at. So that way the request can be respected and captured, but it won't be just buried in with the rest. It'll be isolated so that we can look at it separately and evaluate it. So that's what I would suggest in terms of what we give to the departments and elected officials for budgeting guidelines.
Mr. Chairman,
Oh, Madam Bates.
I have a question about the bids, especially for the laundry equipment. Was energy efficiency and water use efficiency included in the bids? And can we make sure that that's included in our future bids?
That I couldn't speak to. I mean, I did not look at the bids specifications to know that, but I could find out for you and let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, then I think that might be it. Yes, that's it. So that covers everything. So is the committee okay with these rates and guidelines that I've suggested? Is this something that you'd be comfortable with me sending out then to the departments and elected officials?
Any objections or any questions?
Okay.
Looks good.
And then the last thing I have is we were asked by the Human Services Committee to put together what suggested edits for the section 248 of the county code. And so our portion, of course, would be, I think it's section 9, which has to do with the Finance and Budget Standing Committee. And so in the document that I prepared for you, I first of all listed what's currently existing as text. It's pretty broad. And then what I had following that is the suggested addition to add clarity. And what I had done is just try to enumerate I tried to be thorough in giving you a sense of what the responsibilities of the committee are in terms of what the finance department is handling, but I tried not to be too specific at the same time so that it would allow for flexibility. So what this is what I had come up with, and then you can certainly do with it what you'd like, but just this is my suggestion for you. And so the addition to clarity, well, I could read for you what it states. The committee shall have jurisdiction over review of budget proposals as presented by standing committees and recommend a balanced budget to be forwarded to the executive committee. It shall also continually review the financial operations of departments for forecasting, recommending policies of planning, economics, and efficiency to the executive committee. The following shall report to this committee: auditor, treasurer, and finance director. Nothing in this subsection A9 shall in any way affect the reporting of the auditor and finance director to the executive committee of the county board. This committee shall review all financing expenditures not within the approved budget as recommended by other standing committees and shall make recommendations regarding the possibility of financing to the executive committee. It shall not be within the powers of the finance budget committee to determine or change priorities or policies which have been set by the responsible standing committees. So I think there you see it's primarily focused on the budget portion. So what I tried to do is just touch on in my suggested language the other areas that are currently under the finance department. This committee shall also have jurisdiction over the establishment of county financial policies, access to, interface with, and operation of the county's accounting and financial reporting system, preparation of the county's annual financial statements, coordination of the annual financial statement audit, preparation of the county's annual budget, countywide grant reporting and compliance, monitoring of budget performance, generation of financial forecasts, issuance of debt and administration of debt service, funding of county self-insured programs. And I tried to be careful to say that it's the funding of the county self-insured programs so as not to interfere with the responsibility of human services, establishment of county special revenue funds, authorization of transfers and loans between county funds, management of county reserves, provision of procurement services in accordance with federal, state, and county regulations, administration of county procurement card program, payroll processing, and fiscal management of workforce development. So this list encompasses everything that is currently under the purview of the finance department. And so I thought that would be a good starting point for what you might consider adding to the county code.
That's a
Question,
lot.
Shepro.
Yes, Mr. Shepro.
I'm a little troubled by the existing language that says it shall not be within the power of the committee to determine or change priorities or policies which have been set by the responsible standing committee. It seems to me that that contradicts the mission and approval flow that we have observed for years. Maybe you don't explicitly do that, but the point is that the committee recommendations go through finance and then on to exec from that. And I would think that it is within the purview of the committee to at least make recommendations with respect to policies or priorities if it appears that from a financial standpoint, there need to be an alteration. So I would suggest that that sentence be worked on. I would be interested in Mr. Onzic's take on that.
That's something I think I would have to think about, and I would certainly appreciate it if you have suggested changes to the language. We can certainly consider that. Yeah, I don't have an instant response to that, but I agree with your concern, because I think in practice we have been even thinking about the budget itself. The finance committee has, in practice, has been issuing directives to me as finance director to remove something from a budget. And then, because it might involve an elected official's budget, what we do in order to not interfere with the statute of internal controls, we don't take it out of the budget itself from any specific line item, since we cannot tell them what line item. We put it in as a offsetting negative adjustment to their total budget. So we've done that a number of times in the past. So that does seem, and this is after it's been presented to their standing committee. So
I mean, that seems to me to be the basic function of this committee, is to be the ultimate, or maybe the penultimate determiner from all the committees, because normally speaking, the sum of the committee actions will not normally add up to what's available for the entire county. But I do have some ideas about that I would be happy to share with you initially, and see where that might take us.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr.
Please. On the other hand, it does seem like good policy to make sure that the standing committees, which have the technical and the expertise to make these decisions, should not be overruled by the Finance and Budget Committee. Period. It seems like that's common sense, that the standing committees would have the, so then it does lead to the question, what is the role of the Finance and Budget Committee with respect to the standing committees? I think the standing committee should have the responsibility of making that decision and policy.
Mr. Chair, Surges, if I may.
Yes.
Yeah, I think this is a much larger picture. And I would suggest that, well, if we could move this forward under a draft format, and as we begin assembling these, from each committee, I think that it will allow us to see the flow much more clearly, and we can come back and revisit it. But I think that if we continue, I just don't want to draw, lock our heels in the sand, if you will, on this. I think we need to have some flexibility as we begin to look at all the other pieces. And this might be just fine, or we might want to tweak something else, as we go along. But we need to find a starting point, and this seems like a fine starting point. So,
Shepro comment, I would agree with Mr. Surgis's idea that this ought to be sent on.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Madam
and
Chair.
if I may, you all have a deadline for final approval of 2-48 by November. Just, it's not written in stone, but it's strongly suggested.
And it can always be amended.
And you're absolutely right. It can be amended if it needs to be so.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Ms. Bates.
Since this has been in for many years, I take it, and it's been working, I suggest we leave it in.
Well, I think that we're not here today to make the decision on what goes in and what doesn't go in.
Believe Mr.
This is a
Shepherd.
starting point for our discussion, and there's more discussion that's going to take place.
Yeah.
Mr. Martin.
I do agree that we're part of a continuum here of getting this ordinance put in place. But I guess to the point Mavis raises, I would categorically disagree in the sense that some committee has to be responsible for the county's finances on an overall basis. And if we depend on each committee will and should support its own activity. Some committee has to ultimately be responsible for melding all of the requests that come in from the various committees and saying, this is how we're going to balance our budget. And I do think that this committee, if it has a purpose, that's it. Otherwise, what are we doing? We're just, we're rubber stamping. We can only rubber stamp, I guess, is what I'm saying. And then why sit on the committee and why have it?
Ms. Bates.
Well, it states here, shall not change priorities or policies. That doesn't say we can't, that the finance committee can't budget things and can't make sure that the finances work
Well,
and balance the budget.
it just needs to be clarified, but I do think we need to, at the end, this committee needs to have some authority or the committee doesn't serve its purpose.
But this has been in here for many years.
Well, it doesn't make it right. We've been, well, the reason we're amending this ordinance is because we think it needs to be brought up to date.
All right. Moving on.
Okay, that's everything I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Mr. Chairman, Surgis here.
Yes, sir.
As I may have discussed with some of you yesterday, the Surgis family had a glorious day when my son called me last night and said, Dad, I passed my certified financial planner test that he took about a month and a half ago. And I bring that up because Audrey and I are heading out of here in about 5 minutes to run up to Minneapolis to take him out for dinner. So I thank you for allowing me to zoom in. But I am going to cut out of the meeting at this point and thank you all.
Thank you. Have a good trip.
Okay, appreciate it, Dale.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hansick. Very good report. Moving on, item 6, auditor's report, Ms. Wegman.
Good morning. Our report is on file and I can answer any questions.
Any questions of Ms. Wegman? Thank you. Well, here we are under new business. And item A, a resolution amending resolution 22-45 to include fiscal year 22 budget adjustment related to participation in the appellate prosecutor program.
Leonard moves.
Leonard moves,
Martin seconds.
Martin second. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Ford,
Yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Surges is left. Tepe,
Pepe, yes.
Berman.
Berman, yes.
Passes.
Thank you. Item B, a resolution authorizing salary increase for the Kane County Assistant Public Defenders and related fiscal year 22 budget adjustments.
Leonard moves.
Tepe seconds.
Motion and a second. We're talking about 251,636. Did we need a change to this?
Yes, there was a revised resolution that was distributed and it's been posted on the website. And basically it was just to correct some of the account numbers to specify that the funding for this will be coming out of the COVID payroll reimbursement fund. And so that description as well as those account numbers were placed in the amended version of the resolution. So it does not change the substance of the resolution.
All right, then I don't think we need to change we're just changing the wording of it. The amount is not changing. That's the most significant thing.
Perhaps, Mr. Chair, perhaps we should add the word as amended to the motion.
I'll move that.
All right,
As
as
amended.
amended. Very good. Do you have that?
As amended.
Any other discussion on this? Roll call, please.
Ford,
Yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Pepe,
Tepe, yes.
Berman.
Yes. Item C, a resolution authorizing the purchase of laundry equipment for the Juvenile Justice Center to the tune of $64,578. Do I have a motion?
Martin moves.
Martin moves,
Ford seconds.
Ford second. Discussion? This is your question,
Yes,
give
sir.
us about, all
Yes, sir.
right. I think that it really is something you need to take with purchasing. But any other comments? Oh, Joe?
I would just want to say it's possible purchasing, maybe listening to the meeting. So if Maria, if you're available, or Karen, if you could perhaps address that question as to whether that Mavis Bates had. I don't know if they're listening.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Ms. Martin.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the Judicial and Public Safety meeting, Ms. Bates brought up this question, and I believe Mike Davis, the Director of Juvenile Justice, said the green economic concerns were not put into the bid, but they will be in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments, discussion? Roll call, please.
Ford,
Yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Pepe,
Tepe, yes.
Berman.
Berman, yes.
Yes.
Thank you. And item D, a resolution authorizing acceptance of the Bureau of Justice Assistance 50-year 21 comprehensive opioid stimulant and substance abuse site-based program grant and authorizing a corresponding budget adjustment to the tune of $1,199,114.
Martin moves.
Leonard seconds.
Leonard second, discussion. This is a grant. We never turn those down. do
No.
we? Call, please.
Ford,
Yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Pepe,
Tepe, yes.
Berman.
Yes,
Yes.
thank you. Item E, a resolution adopting an fiscal year 2022 budget for the Emergency Rental Assistance Program and amending intergovernmental agreement with the Illinois Housing Development Authority for $285,503.
Martin moves.
Martin moves,
Ford seconds.
Ford second, discussion.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I wanted to make an observation that when we approved having this department handle our rental housing funds, one of the key things they said that they would do is to improve the communications that they had for people that were going through the process. And I want to say that they definitely did not improve the communications, and that the communications with this organization goes in a black hole. It has really nothing to do with this amendment. I just wanted to vent for a moment.
Good job.
Well, your comment is important.
Yeah.
No,
It goes into a black hole, and you do not get communication from them without.
What's your
without wasting
suggestion?
it.
Do you have a suggestion?
Pardon?
Do you have a suggestion on how to improve it?
Yeah, put some people on it that somebody can talk to. You talk to somebody, they say, oh, you just have to wait. It is disturbing.
All right, duly noted. Any other comments? Questions? Roll call, please.
Ford,
Yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Pepe,
I pass.
Berman.
Berman, yes.
Pass.
Item F, a resolution authorizing execution of collective bargaining agreement and approving a supplemental budget adjustment for the Kane County Sheriff's Office Correction Officers. $1,002,643.
Ford moves.
Martin seconds.
Board moves, Martin second, discussion.
Is,
Roll call, please.
Ford,
Ford, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard,
I would like to hold my vote for a second because the resolution, I'm not sure I understand it, and I'd like someone to give me an explanation on that. It looks to me like it's $69,993 from the Illinois Department of Human Services, and then another $211,880 in grants to enhance the ability of community partners to respond to opioid. I'm all for that. I agree with it, but I think there was a statement that there was a larger amount involved, and I just wanted some clarification on that if I could. If not, I vote yes to approve the resolution as stated in our agenda.
I don't think you
Who can give any
qualified answer.
clarity on that?
Sanchez here. I don't see the resolution and it does say not included in the agenda.
I have the resolution.
These were
Okay.
posted outside of the agenda since they were not able to be drafted in time for the agenda. So they're posted separately. And I believe they were emailed out to the board, but
My apologies, Mr. Onsick. I see it now. Thank
okay.
you.
Any other questions, any? Oh, we're in
Yes.
roll call.
thank you. Martin,
Martin, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Pepe,
Debbie, yes.
Berman.
Berman, yes.
Pass.
Thank you. Resolution G, resolution authorizing execution of collective bargaining agreement and approving a supplemental budget adjustment for the Kane County Sheriff's Office civilians.
Leonard moves.
It's $140,695. We got motion.
Martin seconds.
Martin second. Discussion. Hearing none, roll call, please.
Ford,
Ford, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Pepe,
Debbie, yes.
Berman.
Berman, yes.
Pass.
Thank you. Item H, a resolution authorizing execution of a collective bargaining agreement and approving a supplemental budget adjustment for the Kane County Sheriff's Office peace officers, $665,246. We have a motion.
Leonard moves.
Leonard moves.
Ford, second.
Ford second. Discussion. Hearing none, roll call, please.
Ford,
Ford, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Pepe,
Debbie, yes.
Berman.
Thank you. I, a resolution authorizing fiscal year 22 opioid overdose prevention grants of
Sanchez moves.
$211,880.
Leonard moves.
Get Sanchez in there.
Pardon?
Sanchez moved. I second.
I'm sorry, Sanchez moved. Leonard second. Any discussion? It's a grant. Yeah. Roll call, please.
Ford,
Ford, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Pepe,
Debbie, yes.
Berman.
Berman, yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Item J, a resolution authorizing fiscal year 22 Judicial Center Courtroom bid and construction for $777,000.
Leonard moves.
Martin seconds.
Leonard moves, Martin second. Chief Judge?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. We're here just to answer any questions that you have. We have Jason Dwyer from White and Company, Doug Naughton, our trial court administrator, and Roger just stepped out. But just in case anybody had any questions about the project, and we're here to answer them. If not, we're happy to have you proceed.
No questions. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Roll call, please.
Ford,
Ford, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Tepe,
Steffi, yes.
Berman.
Berman, yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Item K, a resolution authorizing a contract extension for the Kane County carpet replacement for $150,000.
Martin moves.
Martin moves,
Leonard seconds.
100 seconds, discussion. Roll call, please.
Ford,
Ford, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Tepe,
Steffi, yes.
Berman.
Berman, yes.
Yes.
Item L, a resolution authorizing a contract extension for Mill Creek SSA Parkway Tree Services to
Same terms and pricing.
Martin moves.
Leonard seconds.
Discussion. Roll call, please.
Ford,
Ford, yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Martin?
Leonard, yes.
Martin, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Tepe,
Steffi, yes.
Berman.
Berman, yes. Item M, a resolution authorizing the payment of invoices for Mill Creek Special Service Area Sidewalk Improvement Project to $28,486.25.
Martin moves.
Leonard seconds.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Ford,
Ford, yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Tepe,
Steffi, yes.
Berman.
Berman, yes. Thank you. Item N, a resolution authorizing fiber optic support services contractors. And it's a not to exceed $500,000.
Ford moves.
Ford moves,
Sanchez seconds.
Sanchez second, discussion. Roll call, please.
Ford,
Ford, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Tepe,
Steffi, yes.
Berman.
Berman, yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Item O, a resolution authorizing the payment of invoices from Cordigan Clark and Associates for $40,700.
Leonard moves.
Leonard moves,
Martin seconds.
Martin second, discussion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Ms. Bates.
When was this contract begun?
What was what?
When did this contract begin?
Oh, this is one of the existing contracts from before we selected new,
Was this before we selected our new
Yeah.
architect?
yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions, discussion? Roll call, please.
Ford,
Ford, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Tepe,
Steffi, yes.
Berman.
Berman, yes.
Yes.
Thank you. P, a resolution authorizing the payment of invoices from Air Comfort, $70,412.50.
Ford moves.
Ford moves,
Martin seconds.
Martin second, discussion. Roll call, please.
Ford,
Ford, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Tepe,
Steffi, yes.
Berman.
Berman, yes.
Yes.
Q, a resolution of approving Illinois Farmers Market Association matching mini grant program in Kane County to $18,000.
Sanchez
Leonard,
moves.
Leonard
Moves,
seconds.
Sanchez second. Discussion.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
You know, I think that amount was supposed to have been amended to 25,000 from 18,000.
Yes, is that correct? Yes.
Yes. So if we could make that adjustment to the resolution, the correction, and then approve that amendment.
All right.
I believe you have to put you have to put a motion forth to amend it.
Or we can,
Yeah, we need a motion to amend.
Unless it's a Scrivener's error, but I'll
It's not-
move to amend.
did motion amendment, right?
no,
I said we need to.
You could have unanimous
I'll move to
consent.
amend.
You could
I'll
have
second.
unanimous consent to replace.
Yes.
Yes,
I think we can have a consent
That works.
motion maker and
yeah, unanimous
Place.
consent.
All
I'm
right.
fine.
so actually it's 25,000, not 18,000.
Right.
Roll call, please.
Ford,
Ford, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Tepe,
Steffi, yes.
Berman.
Berman, yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard.
My pleasure.
Item R, resolution authorizing the purchase of naloxone nasal spray for $183,350.
Sanchez moves.
Martin seconds.
Moves Martin, second. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Ford,
Ford, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Tepe,
Steffi, yes.
Berman.
Berman, yes.
Yes.
Item S, a resolution authorized an intergovernmental agreement between the city of Geneva and the county of Kane for the household hazardous waste collection services and a rider to the offer to contract RFP 22-010 with Clean Harbor Environmental Services for $20,000 per year.
Martin moves.
Martin moves.
Leonard,
Second,
second.
discussion. Roll call, please.
Ford,
Ford, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Tepe,
Steffi, yes.
Berman.
Berman, yes.
Yes.
Item T, a resolution authorized an intergovernmental agreement between the city of Batavia and the county of Kane for household hazardous waste collection services and a rider to the offer to contract RFP 22-010 with Clean Harbors Environmental Services for $22,500 per year.
Martin moves.
Martin moves.
Sanchez seconds.
Sanchez, second. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Ford, yes.
Leonard, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Tepe,
Steffi, yes.
Berman.
Berman, yes. And item U, a resolution authorizing county board travel, meal, lodging reimbursement request for $303.61.
Some big money.
Sanchez moves.
Ford seconds.
Sanchez moves, Ford second. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Ford,
Ford, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Tepe,
Steffi, yes.
Berman.
Berman, yes.
Yes.
And item V, a resolution approving March 2022 claims paid, $8,689,228.82.
Leonard moves.
Leonard moves,
Sanchez seconds.
Sanchez second. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Ford,
Ford, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Tepe,
Steffi, yes.
Berman.
Berman, yes. Item W will hold until after executive session. Any old business that need to come before us, Mr.
Mr. Chairman, I do have one question. There's a resolution in the agenda on my computer, resolution number 21-481, authorizing emergency affidavit for the Kane County Adult Justice Center in the amount of $160,804. I believe it's operating supplies.
That was passed.
Oh, it was passed?
Yeah, that was
Okay.
passed at 181 and had to be.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Appreciate the explanation.
I had that same question in mind. When you see some resolution and that was prior to.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Any old business? Motion to replace our reports on file.
Leonard moves.
Leonard moves.
Ford seconds.
Ford second. Roll call, please.
Gesundheit.
Ford,
Sorry, I
yes.
thought I muted myself. I apologize.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Tepe,
Steffi, yes.
Berman.
This committee is
Berman, yes.
nothing to be sneezed at.
Either
Need a
that or
motion?
you needed a few extra blessings, Ken.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
in honor of Mr. Kenyon, I'd like to move for adjournment.
No. I'm sorry, we need to go into executive session.
We do. Oh,
I need a motion to go
Leonard
to
moves.
executive session to discuss personnel.
Leonard moves.
Pardon seconds.
Roll call, please.
Ford,
Ford, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Pepe,
Pepe, yes.
Berman.
We need to state something more specific than just personnel. Chaperone.
Personnel,
Benefit,
wage and benefit.
benefit protection,
Of a specific employee,
or a specific employee,
or
yes,
is this collective bargaining?
or a specific employee.
Got it. I would ask unanimous consent that the motion be revised to reflect the chairman's supplement.
No problem. Everybody agreed.
There.
All right. We're going in executive session.
Okay, everybody online, you will be receiving an invite to go into the closed session. Before I send that, I do have two state's attorney folks here. One is listed as SAO Civil. I'm assuming both should go in. Please confirm that for me.
Yes, please. It's me and Michelle Neerman.
Okay, watch for your invites. Be aware that we are still live streaming. So until I give you the okay, anything you say will be going out live to the public on YouTube. It'll take just a moment for us to get transferred over. We'll have to wait for anybody that hasn't accepted their invite. So here they come.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone hearing my voice feels they should be in the closed session. Okay, you are in open session.
Roll call, please. We're back in regular session.
Ford,
Board present.
Leonard,
Leonard here.
Martin,
Martin present.
Sanchez,
Sanchez present.
Sturgis, Tepe,
Tepe here.
Shepro,
Pepro present.
Pirog,
Present.
Berman.
Berman's here.
You have quorum?
Thank you. Going back to our new business, Resolution W, approving an IMRF benefit protection leave. I don't have the, there it is. The appropriation resolution does not specify.
No, just
Amount.
8 months of service, so. Leonard moves.
Martin seconds.
So we want to amend this to,
Tepe moves to amend it to an amount not to exceed $10,000.
Board seconds.
good. Any discussion? First, let's vote on the amendment. Roll call
Is this for the amendment?
for the amendment to not to exceed $10,000.
Ford,
Yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
Berman.
Berman, yes.
Yes.
Any further discussion on the main motion? And we roll call on the main motion.
Ford,
Board, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
Berman.
Berman, yes.
Yes.
Mr. Tepe, you had a
Maybe you want to make.
motion you wanted to make earlier.
Oh, yes, in honor of Mr. Kenyon, I'd like to move for adjournment.
Waste the daylight.
Martin seconds.
Have a second by Mr. Martin. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
We're out of here.